Right now, ready to wear my breakfast.
Turning off off at the seat of
The movie we're looking at with Lena Lamont this morning, one of them anyway, is The Orator. Good morning, Lena.
Good morning, Wamo.
Morning. This is a New Zealand film set in the Pacific in Samoa.
It is indeed. And as I understand it, it's the first all Samoan language feature film ever.
Great.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
Long overdue.
That does seem surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, in this sort of film, you know, I think that New Zealand audiences are well used to subtitling nowadays, so that really has no bearing on anything other than everything sounds beautiful and a little bit exotic, unless you speak Samoan. And it's a very languid, lush, beautiful movie. It is. It's really stunning visually, and it's very affecting emotionally, and it's very drawn out as well. It's quite an quite an unusual beast.
Okay, well, tell us about the story. What's it about?
Well, I don't want to give too much away, but
Okay.
basically our protagonist is a beautiful young woman called Vainga, and she has been banished. 17 years ago, she was banished from her ancestral village and her family for something that we don't know. We don't know initially what for. And what I do like very much about this film is that it will plant seeds of, I wonder why that happened. And then very slowly things will unfold. So it's great at not just bamming it all out. Oh, wow, she was banished from her village because, you know, which is lovely. So you watch all that unfold. So she's banished. She's living in another village with a man who turns out to be her husband and with her 17-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And she's clearly not considered part of the community. She's not quite taken into the community. They sort of bear with her, but you get a sense that there is some sort of shame here that's brought her to this other village, and so again that all sort of unfolds. And then her brothers from the ancestral village come to her house after many, many, many years and say, look, you brought shame upon us, you left, our parents are sick and dying or unhappy, you need to come back and make amends. And of course she's got this new life. She's like, why would I want to do that? So there's that sort of familial conflict, except that there is familial conflict, but even the way I'm describing it amps it up way too much because it is very, very understated, very calm. Vainga is calm, she is beautiful, she is gracious, and you can see that she's carrying a lot of hurt, a lot of pain.
Sounds very serious.
It is a serious film. Oh my goodness, it's totally serious. I think I counted one smile from her in the whole film, and I remember watching it and thinking, oh my gosh, she actually just sort of smiled at something that happened, and that was that for her. But there are a couple of scenes where humorous island life sorts of things happen. So,
is there any mention of real life events like the tsunami or anything, or is that not? Does that not feature?
Not to my recollection. But there is some very, very heavy rain and an incredibly key scene in this film. So, not that has anything to do with the tsunami, but I mean it brings its own sort of distress. What I haven't mentioned, I guess, is that the orator in question in this film is Vainga's husband, and he is a dwarf in the village. So he is an outcast from the village to some extent anyway, by dint of his being a little person, and different, that's right. And he is a very noble, honourable man whose, I think, father or grandfather was once chief of the village, but now the village won't acknowledge that actually he might have some sort of rights to sort of step into that role. So for him, the challenge is supporting his wife, who's going through this familial conflict, being a good father to their daughter, and his own sort of path of wanting to assert himself as a man, as an elder of the village, an orator, effectively.
The Orator is the name of the film. Well, do you like it?
I did like it. I have to be honest, I struggled with the pace of it. And then I came away thinking, oh my goodness, have I been tarnished by explosions every 6 minutes and kind of, Michael Bay movies?
Yeah.
And I hasten to add, no, I have not. I can handle long 2.5-hour French films and, whatever. So really it was just about the pacing. The pacing, I've got to say, is entirely appropriate because not only does it give you that sense of a very, island time kind of the way life would be, but it actually makes you pause and soak up what's happening. Do you know what I mean? Like, points don't have to be hammered home because you're in it and it's just unfolding in front of you, and so you really do get the import of everything. But I do wonder whether some audiences will sort of be champing at the bit a little bit for it to move on. Whereas for other parts of the audience, they're going to absolutely love it and just think this is like some wonderful meditative experience almost.
Okay.
So beautiful acting, beautiful looking film, and very touching. And all I would say is I'd be very interested to see how people cope with the pace of it.
All right, well, that was The Orator. Now we're looking at something called The Roundup.
Le premier qui mentionne cette foutue étoile, eh ben j'y mets mon pied au cul, c'est clair?
Oui, monsieur! Depuis qu'il porte l'étoile jaune, nous réalisons effarés que le juif est partout.
Surtout au travail. Vous savez qu'Hitler pense que même le Titanic qui a coulé, c'est à cause de nous.
Ah bon?
Iceberg. Encore un juif.
Comment vous pouvez rire de ça? Les indésirables, voilà comment ils nous appellent. Mais qu'est-ce qu'il vous faut de plus?
La France, c'est le salut des juifs.
Heil Hitler, c'est la grosse tête et je n'aime pas les juifs.
Dieses Volk wird von der Erdoberfläche verschwinden, ausgerottet und ausgemerzt.
Gosh, that trailer turned sinister very quickly, didn't it?
I wonder if listeners hearing that could pick who the guy in the last bit of that trailer was. Yeah. So, The Roundup. French film this time. Talking of pace, my goodness, this could not be faster.
Okay.
Compared with The Orator, I mean, my goodness. This, The Roundup, takes the same piece of history that Sarah's Key, which we talked about earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Sarah's Key and this film, they're both discussing a story around the Holocaust that not many people knew about until probably most of the world didn't know about till these films came out, although I dare say that the French probably knew. I believe it was 1942, July 1942, when the Nazis were heavily involved, shall we say, in Paris and in France and in the government affairs, and basically said, you need to be rounding up your Jews and deporting them. And initially, obviously, there was resistance, and the French were like, well, hang on a second, these are our people. They were born in this country. How can we legitimately deport them? But there was such pressure, obviously, from Hitler and from his band, that it turned out that government officials in Paris were actually instrumental in, I think, deporting up to 14,000 Parisian Jews, and inevitably they were shipped off to, eventually, to concentration camps in Eastern Europe.
So there's an enormous amount of shame.
Enormous amount of shame. So it's interesting in a way that we knew nothing of this, and all of a sudden 2 films about it come out at once.
Yeah.
And I would hate to see the Roundup suffer because people felt, oh, well, I saw Sarah's Key, so I've done it, if you know what I mean. Because the good thing about this is it's handled very differently. Sarah's Key had Kristen Scott Thomas in contemporary role, a historian learning about it, and then flashbacks to the young girl Sarah, whose story we were following. This is completely set in Paris in 1940, I'm sure it's 1942 now. And it follows various Jewish families, a Protestant nurse, played by Mélanie Laurent, who was in Inglourious Bastards, and Jean Reno, who's that fabulous French actor from Ronin and The Professional back in the day.
Good. Yeah.
So he's in it, that's kind of nice. So you've got different stories, different people's stories, all brought together when the Jews are rounded up and sent to the Veldiv Velodrome in Paris, and then sent off into their different camps. So it's a little bit more like The Boy with the Striped Pajamas or some of those traditional German-based Holocaust movies.
Who knew that they had a velodrome back then?
Well, we do now.
Yeah, we do know it now.
But they did.
Yeah, they were going round and round on bicycles.
That's right.
Back that far ago.
And the scenes in the velodrome in this film are fantastic. In Sarah's Key, it was very fleeting because there was so much back and forth, and there was kind of Kristen Scott Thomas's story as well. But in this film, quite a lot of the action initially happens in the velodrome, and I think what's so poignant about it is that the Jews knew that they were potentially in trouble. They're all sporting those yellow stars. They are talking it when they're still in their homes. They're aware that something is afoot, but of course they don't know the extent of what it is. We, the audience, know, and that's what makes this really hard to watch. And then even when they're shipped off to the velodrome and they're told you can bring 2 days' worth of clothes, 2 pairs of socks, and then suddenly we see them 2 days in and they haven't been given any water and they're starting to get really desperate. It's very, very compelling. It's nicely done. It's kind of, the Roundup isn't an amazing film. You know, it's kind of by numbers, but it does what it does really well, and it is engaging, and I would encourage people to go.
It's trying to tell the story, isn't it, of history?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, well, that was the Orator and the Roundup. Don't forget you can check out the film reviews in the Sunday Star Times, and also lenalamont.wordpress.com. We'll go out on a little bit more of the Roundup. Thanks very much, Lena.
Thank you.
Vous êtes allé aussi loin que vous pouviez. Tu crois qu'on sera grand un jour? Puisque je vous dis que j'ai rien fait, monsieur.
On dit adjudant.
Tu dois vivre, Jean, tu m'entends? Jean!